Salvage, a story by user Rantarian. Chapter 20, Black Flag. There was a brief silence as everyone remained motionless. Then Adrian started to descend the gangway, and as he walked, he started talking. "All right, this situation is about as fucked as it could possibly get," he said. "French?" Jen asked, clearly surprised to hear him swearing so casually. "Not this time, sweetheart," he replied. "Jen, meet Cheer and Trix, vice versa. Introductions complete. Everybody lower your guns and relax, because the news gets worse from here on in." Karr and Cheer looked at each other and then did so, taking a step away from Jen just in case of any sudden movements. "Good," said Adrian. "Everybody is friends. Right, now I've got a pair of doctors on board. They're not happy to be there, but they haven't got any kind of choice in the matter." "Why do you have doctors?" Cheer asked, eyeing the entrance to the hunter vessel. "Jen here doesn't have an inoculation implant," he said. "That little oversight has already taken out one crew. We need to assume that you've both been infected with whatever she's carrying." Karr and Cheer looked at each other entirely aghast, taking another few steps back from Jen, who seemed equally horrified at what was being said. "Sorry to drop that on you like this, Jen," Adrian apologized, "but since these two have turned up, we're gonna have to hurry. I don't want my friends here dying like those Ringle Pringles." Jen looked at the two aliens. "These are your friends? That explains why the robot didn't kill them." "I hadn't removed them from the database yet," Adrian said. "Figured if they ever decided to come back, I didn't necessarily want them killed before I could tell them to go fuck themselves."
"Adrian," Karr began, "I'm sorry, we—"
"Left me a note," Adrian said bitterly. "I'm a big boy, Trix. You could have just told me you were going. You all had lives to return to."
"But—"
she tried to continue. "We've got other things to worry about," Adrian interrupted her. He wasn't in the mood to discuss things that didn't directly relate to everyone getting out of this situation alive. "I have the implants for Jen. I got the doctors. Nobody leaves before this thing is contained. I may be a bastard, but I won't be responsible for a galaxy-wide plague." "What do you need us to do?" Cheer asked.
"Right now, I'm currently in the middle of abducting 2 Dominion doctors, Cheer," Adrian replied. "Do you want that sort of thing on your record?"
"Not particularly," Cheer admitted. "You were intending to return them alive, then?"
"I'm not some sort of fucking monster, Cheer," Adrian replied sharply. "I don't murder people, not even people who really have it coming."
He let them wonder over that one, and as far as he was concerned, they could keep wondering. The details of that were his business alone.
"This is how we'll play it," he explained. "Cheer and Karr will be put in the brig as my prisoners."
"I'm not liking this plan so far," Cheer said. Adrian looked at him.
"If you're my unwilling prisoners, then you're not going to be marked as criminals in this undertaking of mine, are you?"
Cheer looked uncomfortable. "Probably not," he said. "But still—"
"It's only for as long as it takes to make sure you're cured," Adrian promised him. "If we don't do it, you won't have a home to go back to. It's better if it's just me."
"Why don't you have a home to return to?" Jen asked. "I mean, I've probably had the bank seize mine."
"Not a discussion for now, Jen," he said.
Or ever, he thought. There'd come a time, though, when he'd have to tell her as much. But right now, he needed to keep her mind on the task.
"You will be playing the part of my significant other."
"You want me to pretend to be your wife?" she asked with a smirk. "I already told you I'm not doing your laundry."
"I've already proven my aptitude to these doctors," Adrian told her. "I'll make sure they don't try anything too interesting when they do the surgery."
"So, in summary," Karr said, "we pretend to be your prisoners, and you convince these doctors to treat us all in addition to implanting Jen with whatever it is she needs."
"When you say it like that," Adrian said, "it does sound like a terrible plan." Cheer grunted. "It's because it is a terrible plan, but somehow your terrible plans always manage to keep us all alive."
"What he's saying," Karr interpreted, "is that we'll do it."
"This way, doctors," Adrian said, leading the 2 Kortai doctors from the hunter vessel and across the flight deck. "You both being Kortai simplifies things. I've recently come into possession of a Kortai heavy scout, so I'm sure you'll be familiar with the medical facilities." "That is the endless sequence," one of the doctors, evidently the senior of the pair. "And it was supposed to have been destroyed when a crazed human—" I've been figured out," Adrian said, pretending that this was somehow very unfortunate.
"My acts of piracy are revealed."
"You'll be considered a criminal by both the Dominion and the Kortai Directorate, along with everybody else you've crossed paths with," the doctor said. "I can only imagine that I will not be returning home." "I've already made my intentions clear when I shot your fucking landing vessel through your ship," Adrian said. "Black flag is already raised, mate. I just need you to sort out a few other problems for me." He stepped aside as the two Kortai followed him into the endless sequence, and studied them closely as they moved. They were clearly terrified of him. He had not been particularly gentle with his abduction of them, which, when he considered their species, was wonderfully ironic. But they were also concerned about whatever it was he needed from them. It was apparently not commonplace to seize medical personnel from a Dominion warship, and he hadn't yet told them the situation. "This," he said as they entered the state-of-the-art medical room and found Jen waiting there, "is Jen. And she's just the first reason you're here." Two humans in one place, thought Gurnzik, as he studied the female. That was a terrifying enough prospect, given the great hunt, although from the looks of things the hunters had already been here, and hadn't left with any of their equipment. All the more reason to regard these particular humans as something unusual. "What is wrong with her?" he asked, not seeing any obvious signs of injury or sickness. "She's in dire need of a translator implant," the human said. "I picked up some from the old crew of this vessel, but I also have some fresh ones. Reckon we'll use one of those." "You abducted 2 Dominion doctors from a warship to install a translator implant?" Gurnzik asked angrily. "You could have done that on any world you went to." "There's another problem," the male said. "Your problem now, too." Gurnzik glanced sidelong at Rickelark. They had agreed to let Gurnzik do all the talking, but Gurnzik was finding he could use some support in dealing with this aggressive being. "What other problem?" "She hasn't been inoculated," the male said flatly. "Everybody on this ship is probably infected." Gurnzik and Rickelkirk stared at the female human in horror. She was smiling at them wanly, as though ashamed of being a walking BioWare factory instead of doing the galaxy a favor and incinerating herself on the spot. "That is problematic," Gurnzik said, his voice wavering unintentionally. That was an understatement, of course. It was nothing short of a disaster, and although he had heard of the pathogens and their treatments through his connections in the medical industry, he wasn't personally familiar with them. If they were infected, it was unlikely that they'd last long enough to redevelop the treatments. "If we are already exposed," he told the male human, "I am uncertain that I'll have enough time to fabricate the cures. I was not expecting to be treating any humans, and we lack the knowledge to recreate the treatments in time." "Not a problem," the human male said, holding up a datapad. "I have it all right here. You see, Baldy, this ship was prepared for carrying a human. Me, in fact. And all of the information on the cures you'll need is right here, and only here." "I see," said Gurnzik. "So if we behave ourselves and fix the female—" "Fix my wife," the human male corrected. "Just so you understand the importance of it, but yes, you'll get the cure, and then you'll use it to treat yourselves and my other prisoners." "There are other beings subjected to your particular brand of savage diplomacy?" Gurnzik asked. "Do they also need translators and inoculations?" "Just the cure will be fine, mate," the human male told him. "And when I'm satisfied that everybody is feeling better, I'll drop you 2 off at the nearest civilization." "I suppose we'll just have to trust you, then," Gurnzik said bitterly. Not that that would stop him from attempting to escape the human at the earliest opportunity. Not when this ship was being hunted by hunters, the Dominion, and who knew what else. These humans were like a beacon for all sorts of unfortunate events to happen to them, and Gurnzik wasn't so careless with his life that he wanted to be anywhere nearby when the first of them occurred. Jennifer Delaney, mid-20s, laying on a bed in some sort of alien hospital where we gray aliens were about to install certain things in her body. She was beginning to suspect that life had just been teasing her when Adrian had rescued her from the Blue Encounter, offering a faint glimpse of hope before throwing her fully into a real-life nightmare.
"I've never liked hospitals," she told Adrian with a thin smile. "They do my head in. Especially alien ones, it looks like. Been a scared of them since I was knee-high, you know. Me ma had to spend a while in one, when she was awful sick. All those tubes and things. She was there for months before they finally let her out, but I'd never wanted to go and see her."
She was a little surprised he sat on the edge of her bed, his hand on her arm but his gaze somewhere else. It seemed softer, more distant, and full of memory.
"Yeah," he said. "Me too, but mine didn't get better."
She swallowed hard.
"I'm sorry to hear that,"
she said. It was the best she could come up with after that kind of revelation. This was the first conversation they were having where she wasn't doing most of the exposition, and as conversations went, this one was getting a little dark and intense. His hand was nice and warm on her arm, though, even if they were a little rough from all his years of hard labor.
"Terminal cancer," he continued quietly. "Not all that rare down in Oz, but this was before they had any half-decent drugs like they do these days."
"That's a bad way to go,"
she said, equally quietly. She'd lost an older cousin to cancer, and although they hadn't been close, she'd at least made the effort to visit. A visit that had only reinforced her dislike of hospitals, in fact. He nodded.
"Yeah, it's hard on everyone. My stepdad lost his mind after she passed.
He stopped, returning to his normal self with a false smile.
But in any case, you've got nothing to worry about, he said as he pointed to his own head. I'll speak from experience. This is a standard procedure for these guys.
He lifted his hand from her arm and slid from the bed, and as he did so, she felt a sudden burst of anxiety.
Adrian,
She said.
you'll be staying in the room for this, right?
He smiled a little at her.
Yeah, Jen,
He said.
I'll be right here.
Adrian had sat watching the procedure with some interest, keeping an eye on the doctors to make sure they didn't try anything stupid. He wasn't anything like a doctor himself, but he could tell that the medical technology available on the Kortai ship put anything on Earth to shame. Right now, he was looking at Jen's brain. A not disconcerting experience, given he'd been having a conversation with her less than half an hour ago. Possibly a deeper conversation than he had intended, but like her, he had had nothing but bad experiences in hospitals, and he'd wanted to put her at ease. He knew that he should at least try to get her home, or at the very least find out more about the barrier that had sealed Earth away from the rest of the galaxy. He also knew that he was being selfish when he decided that he didn't want to. It wasn't that he thought he owned her, or that she owed him anything, or even that he'd really like to share her bed. It was that he had been starting to lose it, being out here alone without any human contact, and that he needed someone to stop him from going completely crazy. Today, he had effectively declared war on the largest governing body in the galaxy for her sake. Not a particularly sane thing to do, so he supposed that perhaps his mind was not fully intact. The Kortai doctors inserted the first of the devices, the translator, into her skull at this point, and Adrian winced as he watched the small device being worked into position. He'd been unfortunate enough to see some really fucked up things regarding human body parts, and had become somewhat inured to the awfulness of it all. And yet, he still wished he'd been able to have someone else watch surgery being done. He snorted. Clearly, there had not been enough concrete in his Weet-Bix this morning, if he was getting uncomfortable at something this small. It might have been the personal factor that was doing it, however.
Harden up, Saunders, he muttered to himself. It's not as though there are bombs going off.
That was about when the Zottersil's intruder system activated, and the bombs started going off. The doctors looked up to him in a panic, although they did not stop working. Adrian rubbed his temple.
I should stop talking.
Agvidal, Kelsey Light Cruiser, Command Deck. Shipmaster Herkutzel looked at the enormous alien vessel on his view screen. It was an unknown, and he could definitely rule out construction by Dominion or Kelsey. Any other known race was seemingly unlikely as well. What he did know was that its flight deck was full of hunter vessels, along with a couple of Kortai design, including a heavy scout, and that he didn't see any sign of anyone anywhere. It might have been a trap, but he hadn't seen any reason that such a trap might have existed. What could be gained by leaving a lot of ships unattended on the flight deck of the largest vessel he had ever seen? He had judged that there were enough hunter ships to carry about 600 of their number, a terrifying number to contemplate, although it was hardly on par with the swarm of swarms that had been wreaking bloody havoc on the galaxy. He had decided to send in 150 of his Marines to take control of the flight deck, and had been pleased when they had executed the perfect boarding strategy. All ships had aligned for rapid disembarkation of the troops, unlike the haphazard arrangement of the other ships. The troops had burst from their ship with precise timing, their training evident in their execution, and had arranged themselves into tight formations, ready to take control of the flight deck and the ships parked thereon. That was when the explosions had started. 2 of the tactical teams had been shredded by whatever it was before any response could be made. The ruined bodies of the Marines crumpled to the deck as the rest of the force scattered in unprofessional blind panic. "What is going on down there, Mission Commander?" Herkutzel had hissed into the communicator link. "Give me an update. I have 30 men coming up as dead." There was heavy breathing on the other end of the link. "Sir," replied the mission commander, "I'm not sure what's going on, but I have a number of men down here who have suffered wounds from flying shrapnel." "There shouldn't be anything down there that explodes enough to cause shrapnel," Herkutzel replied. A flight deck didn't normally have anything on it that could actually explode, although power conduits could definitely light up into lines of pure plasma if your engineers didn't know what they were doing. "I think something is shooting canisters of exploding shrapnel at us, sir," came the reply. "I think it's some kind of machine." "Automated defenses?" Herkutzel asked. That sort of thing was uncommon. There was always the possibility of them being hacked and turned against the defenders, and it would be a hassle to have to take a vessel of this size with the potential number of automated defenses it could hold. "Stand by. I'll get cyber support to assist you." Zottersil Flight Deck. To Mission Commander Uttel, it seemed as though they'd been taking cover from the robot for hours, although it had only been a handful of minutes. He'd given orders to avoid its firing arc, to hide behind the ships on the flight deck to stay alive until cyber support could switch off the defense systems. And if that didn't happen, Yroll wouldn't hesitate on getting his men out of this meat grinder. They weren't land troops, they were Marines, and Marines actually knew how to fight. He had been watching the robot crawl around through a hovercam that flew high enough that it had no chance at being shot down. That let him know where to move, to tell his men where to move, and it let the shipmaster bear witness to what his men were going through. The robot stopped moving. His communication link lit up again. "Cyber support tell me they disabled it, Mission Commander," said Shipmaster Herkurtzel. "They tell me whatever system that ship is running, however, is entirely unlike anything they've seen before. I urge caution." "Is there anything else down here I need to worry about, sir?" Yroll asked bitterly. "Before I lose another 30 men?" "Scans show only the ships you see and a pair of heavy plasma cutters," the shipmaster responded testily. "And watch your tone, soldier." Yroll scowled as he deactivated the link, and was bad-tempered as he called his men together to start investigating ships for hidden enemies. At least the ones he could see were all open for entry, and the Kortai-styled vessel even had a big hole cut in its side. He wished he had more men, or even that he still had the 30 that had been killed before they knew what was happening to them. Some truly twisted mind had come up with that kind of weapon, and while Yroll couldn't help but admire its effectiveness, all of the men who weren't injured and badly shaken were obviously very nervous. He would still have shot the person responsible for its creation if he could. "That's strange," said his second, Pertl. She was pointing at the heavy plasma cutters. They were obviously originally of Hunter design, a realization that made Yroll's fur prickle, but they had been heavily modified with the addition of a steel box where the driver was supposed to sit. After the robot that had shot shrapnel exploders, Yroll didn't like the look of those cutters at all. They spoke of the same demented mind at work. "Stay away from those," he instructed Pertl. And that was when the 2 cutters came to life. Agvidal, Kelsey Light Cruiser, Command Deck. As near as Herkurtzel could tell, all of his Marines had been set on fire as a billowing cloud of scorching plasma had flowed across the flight deck, emitted by 2 malfunctioning plasma cutters. He also guessed that their horrific screams would haunt him for the rest of his life. He sat in his command chair, considering his next move. The answer was not coming easily to him. That's when the communications console came to life. Somebody was trying to contact him from one of the ships down there. A Kortai vessel from the looks of it. He patched it through, hoping that maybe someone had survived. Instead, he was greeted with the first human face he had ever had the misfortune to see outside of the information and news networks. "A human!" he growled angrily. "You are a human!" "Guilty as charged, mate," replied the savage creature almost candidly. It was like he wasn't taking this seriously at all. "Why are you on that vessel?" Herkurtzel demanded. "Why did you kill my crew?" "This is my ship, mate," the human said factually, although as far as Herkurtzel knew, no humans had ever built a ship, and certainly not one so large. "Liar!" Herkurtzel spat. "You have stolen that ship! You have stolen all of those ships!" "Yeah, I did," admitted the human. "I killed about 1,000 hunters personally, took these other ships from Kortai soldiers, and today I blew a hole straight through a Dominion cruiser. Now I've just killed your little invasion. I thought I'd see if I could convince you to go away." Herkurtzel wanted to call the human a liar again, but most of those claims were fairly well substantiated by the fact that the ships he was talking about were in plain view. "You killed my men," Herkurtzel told the human. "Why would I simply leave after that? I am in command of an entire light cruiser, and within moments I could turn its guns on you." "Well, mate," said the human slowly, clearly trying to be intimidating, "I guess there we might have a problem. Do you know what cosmic rays are?" Herkurtzel paused for a moment. "I know a little," he lied. "They're a type of radiation that goes through anything, mate," the human explained. "Hulls, shields, flesh, it doesn't matter. Except you'll feel real fucking poorly if you get a serious dose." Herkurtzel looked at his tech officer, who simply nodded with the kind of grim expression that confirmed that what the human had just said was entirely true. He turned back to the communications console. "You're saying you have a weapon capable of producing these?" "Mate," the human told him, "I have more than just that. But right now I'm trying to fix all manner of bullshit, and I don't have the fucking time to deal with yours. Pull your fucking head in, or I'll come over there and shove it up your—" "Try it!" Herkurtzel snarled despite himself. "You think your species is so dangerous that you can't die? I will destroy you all! All guns, fire on target vessel!" The human stared at him with such a troublesomely cold, dark intensity that Herkurtzel was glad that he was the only one watching him. A shudder seemed to go through the entire ship. "Shipmaster," ventured the weapons tech, clearly discomforted by Herkurtzel's outburst. "Our weapons are no longer responding." "Least of your fucking worries," the human said, the link still active. Mate? Endless sequence medical ward, aboard the Zottersill. You, the human male had said, pointing at Guernsey. You're coming with me. Your mate here gets to keep working on Jen. Where are you taking me? Guernsey demanded. And why? Why? The human male asked, as though the question was for some reason baffling. To make sure your mate here doesn't do anything stupid. You and I are going to murder those fuckers. They have a cruiser, Guernsey protested, even as he was dragged from the room. We can't go up against that without something better than a cruiser. I've just set fire to a small army and used flying bombs to take out all their ship guns, the human male told him. What is so fucking difficult to comprehend about this situation? Guernsey was forced to accept that argument. He'd been listening to the screams of burning men, to the desperate, crazed rant of the enemy commander, and he couldn't recall anyone else being able to single-handedly elicit that sort of reaction. Add to that, the fact that as that had all been going on, the human had been baring his teeth in some kind of mad, evil joy, and Guernsey found he was unprepared to do anything that might bring him into direct confrontation with the psychotic creature. Destroying a Kelsey light cruiser seemed relatively tame by comparison. He noticed that the human was dragging him through the scorched corpses of the landing party towards the ships that they had come in. Beyond the edge of the flight deck, he could see the bulky form of the light carrier lit up with its running lights. Don't tell me you're going to try and board them, he cried. Even a human can't fight that many troops at once. You're not wrong, the human male agreed. I just thought they might like their property back. I had some luck with this tactic earlier, you'll remember. You're going to shoot their landing ships at them? Guernsey asked, glad at least that this time he would not be on the receiving end of the tactic. It would probably work. There was no reason for the Kelsey to expect this sort of tactic to be used against them out here. I am, said the human male, its evil grin returning. Do you think all three will do the trick? Guernsey hesitated, assessing the situation further. I doubt it will wholly destroy them, but I doubt they'll be in any condition to continue the fight. Where are the reactor and command decks located on that light cruiser? The human male asked. But you said you weren't boarding, Guernsey began, then looked at what the human was entering into the console. Oh, well, the configuration is essentially the same as the vessel I was on before. Set the coordinates on this one for the deck, the human male ordered him. The next one will be the reactor. Dealer's choice for the third one. We'll set them all to launch at the same time. I suggest that you target their life support, instead of whatever dealer's choice is. Good plan, the human male said approvingly. Guernsey wasn't sure he liked this human approving of anything he did, but right now his thoughts were focused on surviving the assault the Kelsey were undoubtedly about to launch. Let's just get this done. Agvidal, Kelsey light cruiser, command deck. Shipmaster, the sensor tech said, calling Herr Kurtzel's attention. The troop landers are returning. Herr Kurtzel immediately gave the tech his full attention. I was under the impression that the Marines were all dead. Nobody is on those ships, sir. The tech replied. I've already scanned them, and they have strange bearings. Define strange, Herr Kurtzel ordered him. He wasn't in the mood to play games. He already had techs setting about repairing the weapons the human had managed to disable, with more explosives no less, and it would only be a matter of time before he was able to kill that savage monster. They're not on a trajectory for the docks, the tech said. A ploy to try and distract us so they can escape then, Herr Kurtzel suggested. The human is cunning. Sir, the tech said, paling. They are on a trajectory for the ship. He's using them as weapons, Herr Kurtzel realized. Evade! Zottersill flight deck. Adrian and the Kortai doctor stood and watched their handiwork from the edge of the flight deck. The 3 transport ships had all gone out at the same time, putting all their power into accelerating once their trajectories were set, and quickly seemed tiny against the much larger Kelsey vessel. Looks like they're not entirely stupid, the Kortai had said as the ship began to turn. They're trying to evade. The transport vessels must have chosen that time to hit, as sizable holes and clouds of fire, gas and debris shortly appeared at the locations they'd targeted. The running lights went out. Not fast enough, Adrian said flatly. He couldn't believe he'd had to use the same tactic twice in the same day, or that it had worked both times. I wonder if anybody survived that. An explosion began to rock the Kelsey vessel, starting from the reactor and running through the inside in a red cloud of plasma. Jets of cooling plasma burst from holes in the hull in huge plumes of faintly glowing gas. The death of a starship was beautiful in its own ways. I suspect not, the Kortai replied grimly. And I suggest that you should increase power to the kinetic barrier here, unless you want us all sprayed with debris. Adrian sniffed, admiring his handiwork for a moment longer. Yeah, he said. That sounds like a good idea. And you realize you're now at war with the Kelsey as well, the Kortai asked him, turning away from the sight of a fast-dying starship to look at Adrian. Mate, said Adrian, at this point I don't even give a fuck. All right, guys, that's going to be it for today. Thank you so much for being patient over the weekend. I did take Friday off as well. I just wanted a 3-day little weekend so I could just chill, not do anything, not have to think about anything. But this is, we're going back into Salvage for quite a few chapters here. We're going to watch Adrian do a bunch of crazy shit that will lead to some very interesting things in the main sequence. So thank you guys so much for being here today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedules to be here with me and enjoy this content that I am making for you. If you enjoyed it, please hit like. If you didn't, let me know why. I'd like to know what I'm doing wrong so that I can fix it. I hope that for the people that were complaining about the audio being a little too quiet, that today I bumped it up a little bit, and that it's not too jarring for people who have been transitioning from video to video. So thanks again, guys. Like, subscribe, go to my Patreon, give me all your money. No, like, subscribe. If you want to, continue helping the channel grow, go ahead and go to my Patreon. A big shout out to my patrons, Misleading Guide, Artur, and Russ of the North. Thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you being there and really helping me out. So thanks, guys. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next one.